Hello, and welcome to the Invest in Iconics sentiment analysis for the West Coast route. I'm going to try that once again. Hello, and welcome to the Invest in Iconics sentiment analysis for the West Coast route. My name is David Archer, and I'm a marketing manager at Destination Think. As we begin, I'd like to acknowledge that I'm giving this presentation from the territory of the Haida Nation. I'm located in the village of Queen Charlotte, BC, known in the Haida language as Dajing Gids. Destination British Columbia has invested in sentiment analysis conducted by Destination Think to deepen its understanding of BC's place in the global tourism ecosystem and in the minds of target travelers. This is one of 8 videos that focuses on the sentiment analysis conducted in 2020 and 2021 using pre-COVID data. This presentation in particular focuses on the sentiment analysis that was completed for the West Coast route Iconic. If you haven't already, we encourage you to watch the introduction and methodology video, which explains the background and approach to this research. It will help you understand what sentiment analysis is and how it is being applied here. These are the destinations included in the sentiment analysis of the West Coast route, which covers BC's Pacific coastline. In alphabetical order, they are Bella Coola, Campbell River, Comox Valley, Cowichan Valley, Great Bear Rainforest, Gulf Islands, Haida Gwaii, Nanaimo, Parksville Qualicum Beach, Port Alberni, Prince Rupert, Richmond, Sunshine Coast, Terrace, Tofino, Ucluelet, and Victoria. Note that the final list of destinations included in this potential iconic is subject to change. The West Coast route is a large and diverse geographic area that lends itself to a variety of vacation experiences. Those experiences include getaways, beach vacations, and road trips that appeal to short-haul audiences, as well as longer touring vacations that would appeal to international audiences. Approximately 1.6 million conversations about tourism in the West Coast route Iconic were gathered for this sentiment analysis. This represents about 8% of all tourism conversations about BC tourism during 2018 and 2019. The Iconic earns a tourism sentiment score of 44.75, which is a few points higher than the BC average. These two charts provide an overview of the conversation volume and tourism sentiment score for each destination in the West Coast route. Starting with volume, around 82% of all conversations are related to Vancouver Island destinations. These include Victoria and Tofino, the two places with the most conversations. Next come the Gulf Islands and Nanaimo, each with around 150,000 conversations. After that is Parksville Qualicum Beach, with 73,000 conversations. The numbers continue to decrease from there. Looking at tourism sentiment scores, the average TSS in the West Coast route is strong, well above the BC average. Victoria, Tofino, and the Sunshine Coast are the key destinations with positive sentiment, but there is a lot of variation in scores across this iconic. Several destinations score in the 30s or lower. Destinations on Vancouver Island have an aggregate score of 45.32. This is 3 points higher than the combined score for destinations off the island within the West Coast route. Here is the ranking of tourism assets by volume. Nature photography leads the way with 22% of the total, and beaches and shoreline is not far behind. Restaurants and festivals and events take the 3rd and 4th spots, indicating a slightly more urban mix than some areas of BC. The road trip asset has a low volume here. It is 19th overall by volume and 1.4% of the total. Indigenous cultural attractions are 0.27% of the total volume, but this is more than 2 times the conversation share across the whole province, which is 0.11%. Here is the ranking of assets by tourism sentiment score. Significant high and low scores are marked. Important high scores include nature photography, which is quite strong at 58, Attractions and landmarks have a score of 50, and fishing has 43. This TSS for fishing is higher than the scores from the North and Historic Route iconics in this category. Surfing has the highest score at 69, and though this asset is lower in conversation volume than many others, it is an important asset for some destinations within the iconic. Scores that might be cause for concern are wildlife viewing with 34, camping with 27, paddle sports with 34, and road trip with 31. Each of these assets scores below the BC-wide score for each asset. This chart shows the conversation volume drivers by asset. Assets are listed on the left and destinations across the top. It might help to think of this slide as the fingerprint of this iconic and its destinations. Through analysis, it reveals some of the subtle variations that set each destination within the iconic apart. This chart lists the share of conversation per asset in each destination as a percentage. Notice that there are a few assets common to all places. Those are marked by solid blue bars running from left to right. There is nature photography, which tends to have the highest conversation share in each destination. Beaches and shoreline is another asset with a significant conversation share in all places. The restaurants asset is important in most destinations, as is hiking and rock climbing. There are 5 destinations that score below 20% in nature photography. This is a variation from the BC norm because that asset tends to gain the highest share of conversation throughout the province. In this iconic, some of the smaller destinations are outliers. Cowichan Valley, for example, has a unique mix of attractions, events, music, sports, restaurants, and wineries, but a lower nature photography score. Other destinations have a reputation heavily focused on one asset. For the Great Bear Rainforest, 51% of conversations are related to nature photography. This asset is complemented by wildlife viewing and paddle sports. Some other destinations of note here are Parksville Qualicum Beach, where beaches and shoreline have 34% of the total conversation. In Prince Rupert, restaurants and accommodations both have a high share of the volume. In Tofino, attractions and landmarks and surfing are important. Although surfing has 2%, it is much higher here than it is elsewhere, and Victoria's profile is more diversified than many other places in the West Coast route. This slide lists the top 5 tourism assets by volume for each destination. It is a simplified version of the previous chart, and it only shows the assets with the highest share of conversations. This shows again that nature photography is common to each destination, as is beaches and shoreline. The chart also reveals some similarities between smaller groups of destinations. For example, Sunshine Coast and Ucluelet have an identical top 5 with their combination of paddle sports and restaurants. Bella Coola, Campbell River, and Haida Gwaii form another group where fishing and wildlife viewing have significant volume. Some destinations, like Prince Rupert, are unique. That destination is the only place where accommodation ranks in the top 5. Here are the tourism sentiment score results per asset for each destination. The information on this slide is dense, but I will point out the most important facts. The top row lists the BC-wide scores for each tourism asset, and the numbers below are marked green or red to signal whether they are above or below the BC aggregate scores. The green numbers are above and the red are below. Squares are left blank where there are fewer than 100 conversations. Note that this chart does not show the volume of conversation in each asset, only the quality. The data reveals some notable assets. Fishing has a mixed performance across the iconic, but scores well in many places, such as Victoria, Terrace, Comox Valley, Sunshine Coast, Tofino, and Ucluelet. Music and performance art. This asset scores well in many places also. Wildlife viewing has a mix of high and low scores. And Tofino, Prince Rupert, the Gulf Islands, and Haida Gwaii have surprisingly low scores in this asset. Cycling and biking is only strong in a few places. Two other assets with scores that tend to be below average are camping and road trip, which is low with a few exceptions. Here are some observations from the data that are organized into potential strengths and opportunities for improvement. First, this iconic has a strong overall TSS boosted by BC-wide traits in nature photography, attractions and landmarks, hiking and rock climbing, as well as differentiating factors like restaurants and fishing. Key destinations like Victoria and Tofino have very positive reputations. Many destinations also have strong fishing scores, and further research could determine which saltwater or freshwater experiences are most popular. There is strong diversity across the list of destinations and experiences. Places like the Great Bear Rainforest, the Gulf Islands, Richmond, Tofino, and Victoria have established and well-known tourism experiences, and these are reflected in the data. Here are some potential opportunities for improvement. There are poor road trip scores in central Vancouver Island and several other places. Low scores for camping, cycling and biking, and paddle sports may indicate poor experiences outside of well-established destinations. The risk here is that more remote locations don't live up to BC's overall reputation for tourism or the reputation of this iconic. There is a wide disparity in sentiment quality between places. For example, Cowichan Valley, Haida Gwaii, Parksville Qualicum Beach are important locations, but are weaker in reputation than other destinations like Victoria and Tofino. Also, Indigenous cultural attractions have a higher volume share here compared to other iconics, but a low TSS. Victoria, for example, has only a score of 16 in this asset, and this weak score is a potential risk for an iconic with internationally renowned Indigenous groups. Here are some key takeaways. Number one, the West Coast route has a strong, diverse set of experiences. Number two, several destinations stand out with distinct reputation profiles. These distinctions point to key strengths and opportunities for improvement within this potential iconic. And number three, Vancouver Island's overall tourism reputation in both volume and sentiment score is stronger than the reputation of West Coast route destinations that are not on the island. The tourism reputation of Vancouver Island, both in terms of the volume of conversations and tourism sentiment score, is stronger than those destinations that are not part of Vancouver Island. This brings us to the end of the sentiment analysis presentation about the West Coast route. As mentioned at the outset, this is one of 8 videos focusing on the sentiment analysis conducted using 2018 and 2019 data. We invite you to explore more sentiment analysis research by emailing iconics@destinationbc.ca to request YouTube video links. Here is a list of the other available videos, which include consumer research on perceptions and interest toward the various iconic routes and places, competitive destinations reviews, and an overview of what is involved in the Iconics place branding process. To learn more about the Invest in Iconics strategy, visit destinationbc.ca/iconics or email us at iconics@destinationbc.ca. You can also subscribe to Destination BC's corporate newsletter, Directions, for Iconics updates sent straight to your inbox. Thank you.